Hi everyone, Matt here, and I am excited to share with you today a really cool Abzan Midrange deck. Shout out to Reddit user ScoopDragon, who not only created this masterpiece, but also is allowing me to share it with all of you on YouTube. I'm going to post a link in the description below to the original Reddit post from ScoopDragon. I encourage you to check it out. He does a great job explaining the deck as well as breaking down quite a few of the matchups. Let's dive in. So first things first, we are playing a Lurrus deck, which means that all of our permanents are 2 mana or less. And a big part of this deck is both getting Lurrus into play when you can protect it and using it to generate value turn after turn. If we look at the 1-drops, let's start with Alseid of Life's Bounty. I found Alseid to have two main purposes in the deck. The first is to protect Lurrus. Lurrus is so important. You want to do everything you can to keep it on the board. But also, Alseid can help you punch in a lethal attack by giving a creature protection from whatever color the blocker is and getting that last bit of damage through. Next, we have Knight of the Ebon Legion and Pelt Collector. These are two of our early ways to start establishing pressure. And like many of our threats, you're going to see that we play a lot of cards that scale nicely as the game goes on. So the Pelt Collector can grow, and obviously the Knight of Ebon Legion can pump once you're at 3 mana. So these 1-drops have utility long past the early turns of the game. And then a really interesting but extremely impressive inclusion are 3 Soul Guide Lanterns. I've been so happy having this in the main deck. It picks off an Uro, it does a number on the cycling decks by exiling their graveyard and making their Zenith Flares completely ineffective. And with Lurrus, it is a turn after turn card draw, as you can sacrifice it and just buy it back every single turn while Lurrus is in play. Moving on to the 2-drop slot, let's start with Hero of Precinct 1. This triggers really nicely off of a lot of our other 2-drops. And it also gets triggered by Mortify. So this can really generate quite a nice army and allow us to go really wide as the opponent is trying to block our creatures. The Mire Triton also has a lot of synergy in the deck. Not only does it load up the graveyard to make things like Fiend Artisan bigger and give you more choices for Lurrus, but also the Death Touch makes it an excellent blocker. And in a pinch, you can even use this life gain ability to buy a little bit of time against the aggressive decks. We've also got Wildborn Preserver, another threat that scales nicely as the game goes on. You can dump mana into it to make it larger and larger. And as you'll see, because our creatures are pretty inexpensive, we really do need these sort of utility creatures that get bigger as the time passes. All right. Moving on to Chevill, Bane of Monsters. So Chevill, we play just 2 copies. It is legendary, and it's not always the card we're looking for, but it does a couple things really well. The first, as a 1/3 Death Toucher, it can be an excellent blocker against the aggressive decks, but it also is a nice source of card advantage. So you can put a bounty counter on a planeswalker or creature during our upkeep, and then we play a lot of removal spells. And getting rid of whatever that permanent is will automatically buy us back the card once there is a bounty counter on it, and next turn you can rinse and repeat. The 4 Fiend Artisans are very much the heart of the deck in a lot of ways. Not only do these scale really nicely and get quite large later in the game, but the sacrifice ability is really useful. You can search up whatever creature fits the situation at hand. And if you have a Lurrus in play, this is a wonderful way to run away with the game, as you can immediately replay the sacrificed creature with Lurrus, generating an extra creature every single turn. So Fiend Artisan, a very powerful Ikoria card that hasn't really found a home yet, but serves quite the role in this deck. Then we have the Glowspore Shaman and the Skull Prophet. Not only are these 3 power attackers that come down on turn 2, but the Shaman does both help smooth out your draw, help you hit that 3rd land, and it also synergizes really well with our cards that care about creatures in the graveyard. The Skull Prophet similarly can help you get to 3 mana, and the second ability allows you to grow your Fiend Artisans or help find additional things to buy back with Lurrus. The last 2-drop is 2 Assassin's Trophies. I try generally to avoid using this early on in the game when the ramp may really help the opponent, but especially later in the game, just an absolutely all-purpose removal spell to deal with any troublesome non-land permanent can be really useful, so I do enjoy having the 2 of them in the main deck. And then we have a few 3-drops. I found Call of the Death Dweller is something I'm often looking for to buy back Lurrus if the opponent is able to remove it, but just grabbing 1 or 2 creatures and putting a Death Touch and a Menace counter on them can sometimes be relevant as well. We have Mythos of Nethroi, and because we are playing Abzan, this is essentially an all-purpose removal spell, as it is usually trivial for us to pay the green-white mana cost. Finally, our last removal spell is 1 Mortify, just one additional way to take out things like Fires of Invention, Wilderness Reclamation, or a troublesome creature. Moving on to the mana base, we've got 3 Godless Shrine, 4 Overgrown Tomb, 4 Temple Garden, 3 Indatha Triomes, 3 Fabled Passages, a Plains, 3 Swamps, and 2 Forests. Now, as we look at the sideboard, you'll notice that we've got some other cards that synergize pretty well with Lurrus. The 3 that come to mind right away are the Dead Weight. Not only is this a really efficient way to remove small creatures, but once you've got Lurrus in play, you can buy it back turn after turn as it is a permanent. Then we have 3 Duress for the spell heavy or more controlling decks, a Shadow Spear for matchups where the life gain matters or we need the ability to trample over blockers, Apostle of Purifying Light, a nice card against the black-based decks. There are some mono-black Obosh decks running around, and also another way to potentially interact with the opponent's graveyard. The only change I made from the original deck list was in this slot of the sideboard, there were originally 2 Grafdigger's Cages. I found the cost to our deck with both Lurrus and Fiend Artisan to be a bit too steep, so I swapped them out for 2 Hushbringers, addressing the Agent of Treachery menace in a slightly different way. We've got 2 Easy Prey as more removal against the low-to-the-ground aggro decks. And finally, 2 Noxious Grasp. Well, that is it for Abzan Midrange. I've had a lot of fun playing it on the ladder. 2 pretty good success as well. And one tip that I will give you, because it took me a few games to really get the hang of it, is that you need to be careful which land you play on turn 1. I have been burned before by playing a basic on turn 1, only to realize I needed 2 different colors of mana for my creature on turn 2. So oftentimes it is correct to shock yourself with one of your duels on turn 1 to set up your future turns. The other piece of advice I will give you is when you are considering playing Lurrus, if you are able to wait until you can protect it with an Alseid of Life's Bounty, it is very often correct to do so because Lurrus is such an important creature and generates so much value for the deck. Other than that, have fun playing it. Let me know what you think. And again, huge shout out to Reddit user ScoopDragon. Check out his post below and enjoy.